Hello and welcome to Truth, Lies and Work. What you're about to hear is from one of our recent LinkedIn Lives, a live panel discussion where we dig into the big questions shaping modern work. If you'd like to join us for the next one, just search for Leanne Elliott, that's me, on LinkedIn and hit follow. We announced them there first and we obviously launched them there first. Right, let's go into it after a quick message from our lovely sponsors.
Okay. All right. Me.
Welcome, everybody. We're going to leave it just a minute or so to make sure as many people can join us from the beginning as possible. But yeah, nice to have you here if you're already with us. If you're watching the recording, you missed it. But luckily we recorded it, so you are right.
What was more important than this? Well, while we wait for everyone to come in, should we just all shout out where we all are in the world? So, Jeffrey, do you want to start off and tell us where you are in the world and what the weather's like? Because we're British.
I am in warm and sunny Tampa, Florida, where it's around 68 degrees Fahrenheit. There's a nice little breeze out. And as I was bragging, I felt like, when I went out for a stretch earlier, I could have sworn I heard squirrels singing, and I felt like Snow White kind of getting up this morning. I was like, wow, I can't wait to join this podcast. Then I came in here and heard about your weather situation and kind of felt bad bragging. So,
well, and
Kristien, how
I'm
about
in,
you? Yeah.
So I'm in Mexico City. Beautiful sunny weather today, but we've had awful storms the last couple of days. So definitely hasn't been living up to the Mexican stereotype. But beautiful to be here with you all. Really excited about this podcast today. We're going to get into it with some really timely topics. And yeah, can't wait to get started.
Fabulous. And Georgia, whereabouts are you in the world?
I am in the UK, in all places, Leicester. I'll be supporting on the tech side today.
Fabulous. And regular listeners know where we are, Leanne, don't they?
Yeah, we're in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's really windy today. We were just saying to the guys before we came on, we've had 2 power cuts today. So there's a chance that we both might just disappear at any moment. But if that happens, Georgia, Jeffrey and Kristien have said they're fine to just crack on with ours. So yeah. Well, someone will be here.
And if anyone's from Restream's watching us, then just tell us what happens when the host's computer just shuts down. Does that mean that the whole room implodes?
Guess
God
we'll
knows.
find
We
out.
will find out. Yeah, I'm definitely nodding. Yeah, so we may all be taken offline. Georgia, have you got any news on whether we are live or not?
We are live. We went live just halfway through Jeffrey's weather announcement.
Oh, we're not going to ask. Okay, be nice.
It was sunny, okay?
Yeah, we get it. Okay, Lee.
Oh, well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Truth, Lies and Work Live. If you haven't heard of us, we are the award-winning podcast where behavioral science meets workplace culture, and we are brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. My name is Leanne. I'm a chartered occupational psychologist.
My name is Al. I'm a business owner.
And together we help you simplify the science of work and create amazing workplace cultures. Today, we are talking about employee engagement in times of crisis. The world is in a bit of a strange moment right now. I don't want to say that we're all doomed, but there's a sense of that, I think. Doom. Wars are escalating and economies are under pressures and layoffs keep making the headlines, and a lot of employees are doing what we call job hooking. They're staying where they are, and it's not necessarily out of loyalty, it's more of fear. Which raises a slightly uncomfortable question for leaders. Does employee engagement even matter right now? Because when businesses are focused on survival, things like culture and trust can quickly slip down the priority list. But how organizations behave during difficult periods tends to stick, for better or for worse. So in this episode, we'll be unpacking what uncertainty actually does to trust, motivation, and retention, and what really matters if you want to keep people engaged when things feel unstable. Because let's be honest, the research is pretty clear on this. Organizations that continue to invest in their people during downturns come out stronger. And it's not in like a feel-good way. It's a real commercial way. It's productivity, retention, and how quickly they recover. To help us dive into this today, we are joined by 2 phenomenal guests. We have Kristien Turner. He is the CEO and founder of TK Talent Group. He has spent around 2 decades working in HR globally, including leader employer brand at HSBC, and has been involved in over 100,000 hires. He also has a master's in organizational psychology from Harvard. Nice. And he's got a perspective on this that I think is really going to challenge how a lot of leaders think about employee engagement right now. We are also joined by Jeffrey Fermin. Regular listeners will know we've had Jeffrey on very recently, actually. Jeffrey has spent over a decade working at the intersection of HR and technology. He was part of the founding team at Officevibe and has worked across a number of HR tech companies. He now leads demand generation at All Voices. It's a platform built around the idea that employees need a real voice at work, not just a suggestion box, selection box like it's Christmas. I wouldn't mind that. We're also joined by our associate producer, Georgia. She'll be moderating the comments section and we'll be sharing your thoughts and questions with us throughout the panel. So do pop anything that is on your mind in the comments section. Everybody, welcome.
Welcome.
Hello.
You set that up very nicely.
Fantastic intro. 10 out of 10. By the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to dive straight in because we've got a lot we can talk about on this. And Kristien, I want to come to you first. You've said that engagement isn't the same as commitment. And actually that the people planning to leave can often look more engaged than the ones who stay. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, I think that's really basic psychology. That's that moment where people just go, and I'm not going to start swearing on LinkedIn Live, but they just kind of give up. They just go, we don't care anymore. We know what's going on. We've seen this happen before. We've seen this blueprint. We're seeing our colleagues getting fired with a moment's notice. We're reading the news headlines. We are disengaged. But you know what? That employment survey comes around once a year, and I've got to give my scores out of 100, and I'm going to just put 95 because why rock the boat? Because I think a lot of people assume, and rightly so, that certainly in small teams, that's identifiable information. So I think, when companies talk about the confidential employee engagement survey, we've got to make sure that it really is confidential if you want to surface what's really going on in your org. Because I've seen a lot of times, certainly in mid-size and smaller, organizations where that supposed confidentiality does not exist, you put on your scores there, and guess what? 2 weeks later, you're out of a job. So I think people are starting just to kind of cocoon. I think they're starting to shut down. They're not really saying what's happening behind the scenes. And that becomes a pretty complex situation to manage through because your employees are kind of lying to you, but they're saying, well, hey, what? Management's lying to us as well. So why do we need to be the ones speaking up here? There's this kind of real disconnect. And I think as we go through the conversation today, we're going to talk about, from the candidate's viewpoint. I'm coaching I've coached hundreds of people through these situations, but at the moment I've got kind of 15 incredible coachees in senior positions that are all thinking, what's next? Many of whom are looking to kind of ditch out on corporate life. They're saying, there's got to be more to life than this. We want to go into the gig economy. We want to go into, doing fractional. We want to open our own business. The candidate's feeling this. They're being ghosted. They're applying to 1,000 jobs and getting no responses on any of these kind of AI-infused ATS platforms. That's the candidate. And then the companies are saying to me, Kristien, we can't find talent. Where's the talent? There's a war for talent, but we can't find them. Where are the technologists? Where are the data scientists? So both sides kind of have their very strong viewpoints on what's happening in the job market right now, and they're not meeting. We're not meeting in the middle. Everyone's going in kind of a separate direction. It's a tough old time out there. Doesn't matter if you're in Mexico City, if you're in Miami, Florida, you're in London. This is happening everywhere. This is not a localized problem. This is not an Americas or a European thing. This is global. Everyone is feeling the pinch in the job market at the moment, the employers and the employee. Jeff.
I want to just add by saying in my experience, when we saw these large data sets at Officevibe, found that like high engagement scores didn't really necessarily mean that you had a healthy culture. And when it's a fear-based economy and employers market, people might mark that they're satisfied because, the alternative is really unemployment. And that's not really engagement. That's really a matter of just like living in fear and saying like, I'm going to stay as long as possible. I'm going to hug this job for, as long as I can and ride this thing out. And hopefully that next opportunity comes. The other thing I'd like to add, and God, I'm going to be the one to drop a morbid analogy here in I can't believe I'm the one to do it, but it's almost like that whole notion of like, before someone feels like they're about to pass, they kind of have like all this energy in the world. So as you're kind of ready to leave an organization, you're like, hey, I'm pretty much done. Yeah, I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to knock them all out. And employees just kind of navigating under that same kind of psyche where they're like, my time here is done. I'm pretending to be engaged and care about the organization and do all these things. But the reality is they're probably on their way out. And I could assume right now that folks, given all the uncertainty in the world and the doom and gloom that we get from the news, the 24-hour news cycle is just constantly pushing all this negativity towards us. I'd say that, like right now we're in a not give an F kind of mood as employers kind of navigating the market. And we're just kind of saying like, oh, what's the worst that could happen? Let me go out. Let me do my job hunting stuff. Let me work with folks like Kristien and help get me out there. And when the time comes, I'm just going to like, bring my positive attitude elsewhere. So I think, that's all I got on that one.
I need to call out the elephant in the room because obviously we're on LinkedIn, and I know people would have seen some of the posts I've written on LinkedIn. And Jeffrey and I met initially because of a post I put on calling out Officevibe for not doing what it said it was meant to be doing. To be fair, though, my experience with Officevibe was post Jeffrey Fermin. So there is that. But we then had you on the podcast and we talked very openly about this. If anyone hasn't heard that, go and listen to Jeffrey's episode. We addressed the kind of Officevibe story head on. So I don't want to repeat that here. But what I do want to ask you, Jeffrey, is, as you say, if people are kind of in that, I think it's called the surge, isn't it, in medical terms, when you have that surge of energy before the end. If people are kind of having that energy boost, knowing that they've, that when the time's right, they're going to move on, what should leaders be measuring at this point to understand what is going on and how people are thinking and feeling in the workforce?
Yeah. Might be getting ahead of ourselves with this one, but right now engagement levels are at, a COVID level rate when it comes to engagement rates. And I always like to say the foundations of employee engagement really comes down to, listening to your employees. Truly, that's it. Like we try and overcomplicate these things. Even at Officevibe, we had 10 different drivers for employee engagement, and we tried to put a lot of science in there. I'm going to leave that up to what I call the big brains. Kristien, all the org psych folks that really understand the science behind it. At the, I guess, the most foundational or fundamental level, it's really about listening. And I think managers and HR folks alike should just, not have notes, not have documentation, just go out there, talk to their employees and really listen to concerns. Let's go human to human, right? What's the main word over in human resources, right? Like the human component of it needs to be really maximized within these turbulent times. And we need to start having conversations and really understand. If you want to have a productized version of that, that's fine, but just make sure everything is kind of written down and you're understanding what's going on the day-to-day in your workforce. And really, like, I can't stress it enough. Really sit down and talk with folks and understand what are some of the things that are bothering you. What are some of the things that we might not be offering you as an organization to help you, do your job effectively? Are we providing a psychologically safe environment for you to thrive in? Are we meeting all your needs, your expectations? I'm sure we're going to get into it in a little bit, but are we doubling down during this turbulent time to make sure that you are engaged, you're satisfied with your job, and can we keep you beyond what's now become commonplace, a 3 to 4 year job period or job cycle, right? Like, I feel like there's ways that we can really extend that average life cycle at a job from 3 to 4 years and get back to that point where you're a career person at an organization. And I do think the foundation at very base level, we just need to get back to listening and talking and communicating. With that said, I don't want to sound too kumbaya-ish and sound like we're in a fireside. I want to open it up to you organizational psychologists out here and see what you all have to say.
Look, I've been involved. I think there's some great points there. I've been involved in these dashboards where you've got like 100 different elements and the data's flying around and there's 150,000 people and I want heat maps and I want pulse checks and I want to measure, every single indicator that's known under the sun. And I think there's really now two things we should be looking at. You can make it super complex. You can bring in every single HR consultant from around the world, every big four accountancy firm to put kind of a really sophisticated system. There's two things that any small, medium, or large business should be doing. I think the first thing is, are we attractive? And I think the best pulse check, the best acid check for are we an attractive organization? Do people want to join us? Look at your hiring metrics. Like, can I convince people to come and work here in the first place? That for me is just such a great way of looking at, is this a great workplace? Have we built the right culture? Is this somewhere that people want to come and participate? Look at your hiring metrics. If you're struggling to find people now, going to be honest here. If you're looking for 1,000 full stack engineers at the moment and you're looking for 500 data scientists, I'm not sure, if you're finding it hard to find those particular characters, that might not be a reflection of your company organization. It might just be around supply and demand. There's certain job families that are unbelievably hot, that have these opportunities to work remotely from one corner of the world with another, earning huge dollarized salaries. But generally, you look at those hiring metrics and you're seeing that you're getting a 68% offer decline, or you're seeing that it's taking you 80 days to get, applications for these 50 jobs you're trying to fill. You can look at any of those hiring metrics, and I think that gives you a great idea as to whether or not your organization today is attractive or not. And we're going to get into that a little bit later, because I'm really passionate about employer brand. I'm passionate, Leanne, around, HR need to think a little bit more like a marketing and a communications person, because we're selling. You're selling. You're selling a product. You're actually selling the most important product in somebody's life, probably after their family, because this is where they're going to spend the lion's share of their existence. So you've got to think about what you're selling externally. So we'll get into that a little bit later, but look at those hiring metrics. If you're a company founder, if you're a head of sales, if you're a commercial director, if you're a head of HR and you're struggling to find people, something's going wrong. Something's going wrong. And that second metric, and I love this is so much better than a retention metric. I'm going to say, go on Glassdoor. Go on Glassdoor. Yep. It's your TripAdvisor for the job market, right? So I love it. You go on there, you're going to get a rating. It's out of 5 stars, a bit like a hotel. If you see that company's at 2.7 stars and they've got, 4,500 comments and everyone's talking about horrible work-life balance, everyone's talking about awful leadership, everyone's talking about a horrendous benefits package, being exploited. Well, yeah, don't go. Don't sign up for it. And as a company, you've got to get some real talk going on in your organization, and you've got to say, hang on a minute, we're sitting here in the kumbaya kind of meetings in-house saying that everything's great, that our retention's at an all-time low at 9%, but externally on the equivalent of TripAdvisor on Glassdoor, we're at a 2.3 or a 2.4. Something's wrong. And so what I love to do as an HR professional, and I'm sure there's lots of HR professionals watching us now live on LinkedIn, go on Glassdoor, look at your company, start to go down into the team that you work with or represent, that part of the business, take some of the comments out, and next time that you go to an exco or a meeting, bring them out. Talk about John Smith. Talk about Susan. Let's talk about Susan. Hang on, Susan. By the way, there's 5 comments that have gone up over the last 3 months about you and your leadership style. Now, I know that some people don't feel psychologically safe enough to do that, but I've done that in the past. It's good to be provocative. It's good. This is the employee voice. Problem is they're not employees anymore because they've ditched, they've left. And now they feel like they can really say what it is they're feeling. So I think today, you can overcomplicate this. We've got so many different data points. We know that AI will, measure all of those hundreds of data points. I think look at 2 things. Can you hire easily and in a decent period of time and decent quality talent as an organization? And over here, go and look at what they're saying about you after they've left the premises. Best place to do that at the moment, I still think, is on Glassdoor.
Kristien, I think that's such, and when you said it's like marketing, man, I could have just jumped over there and given you a hug. I am so 100% behind that. Now, one thing I think which is really important to think about with Glassdoor is if you have got a negative score, a 1 star, someone cares enough to go on there and write a review about you. So potentially they care enough about your organization. They want it to be better and are bitterly disappointed. So, I mean, they sound to me like the 1 star sound to me like the ones that really, really are like the most important thing. But school me, is that right?
Well, kind of, right? I mean, they're obviously the most upset. They're the ones that are going, my goodness, this was a disaster. I signed up for something and I got something totally different. If this was a Trustpilot review, yeah, it's awful. They're going on there and manifesting that they've had a horrendous experience. But you're kind of right. I guess the lower the score as well, and the scores get broken down. So you get to see, Al, what's sitting behind some of those scores. You'll see the emotion behind it. And I do think there's an element of people that go on there and do this. They're doing it because they genuinely want the experience to be better for the colleagues they left behind, and maybe for those friends or graduates in the future that are going to join. So I do think people are doing it. I don't think it's out of spite. I don't think many people go on there and decide to talk about a 3, 4, 5 year career with malice or malintent. I genuinely think they're doing it because they're like, hey, we try to speak up. We try to be honest. We try to manifest in those different scores and those different forums whilst we were employed with you guys, now the only way that we can share that is taking this to Glassdoor. So you're right. I think there's a lot to unpack there. But do you know what? A little secret. Most companies don't look at Glassdoor. They don't care. No, Al, like 95% of HR teams, I don't think have looked at their Glassdoor scores the last year. They're not looking at those inputs because we're going to use the employee survey that we spent $500,000 putting in place. We're going to use what we did. But we're not going to look external, or we're going to find ways to say, oh, there's only 3,500 data points there. So there's a little bit of a shutdown and a bit of a denial going on. My invitation is go and look. Feedback's a gift. Go and see what they're saying about your organization and take it to your leadership team. Take it to the CEO. God, take it to a founder. As a founder, if I was to see comments like that and somebody talking about my organization that I built with so much, passion and emotion, I would be gutted. I'd cry. I'd literally have a breakdown and go, how do I improve this? How do I turn this around? And I kind of want companies to do the same. I want them to go and read what's on there and get real about it.
Now, there is a kind of an opposite side of that, a bit of a sneaky side, that if this is one of your competitors who's got bad scores, you were saying, you're already there. You were saying that you want to create the place where someone wants to live. You've now got a checklist of all the things that you can be great at, and then you are going to be somewhere they want to go and that they want to go and work at. Jeffrey, you look like you had something to say.
Oh my goodness. I just wanted to say, Kristien, you absolutely nailed it. At one point, we were even considering back in the Officevibe days, finding ways to kind of show like how improving certain scores and certain metrics would tie into Glassdoor's scores improvement or decrease, right? Like, I really have nothing else to add. I thought that was fantastic. And I think more HR practitioners should be looking at their Glassdoor scores to find issues that might have not been surfaced within either engagement surveys or in their employee relations platform. All these things could really benefit an organization. And if you're able to solve those issues, granted, you're getting it from an exit interview or a review system, it's a big win right there. So massive unlock. I recommend it. 2 thumbs up.
There you go. You've all got your money's worth so far. Leanne, should we get should we get some comments and see what you're up to?
Let's.
Georgia?
They're all rolling in for now. Perhaps we'll come back to it later.
No worries. I can see some up here, and they all. I think everyone's getting a lot of love. People talking they're saying you're talking a lot of sense there. Lee, what are your thoughts on everything?
I also love those data points. I think, it's getting an honest view of people that have exited the business, because nobody's ever honest in an exit interview. It's for the same reason. They're moving on. So I think that's really smart. And I think you're absolutely right as well in terms of attracting people into our business. There is, of course, the people in our business that we need to think about as well, and especially in times of crisis. And I want to go back to this idea of job hugging, and it's being talked about more and more. People are staying put not because they're engaged, so that that low turnover isn't reflecting high engagement. People are staying because now is not the time to move on. They feel they have to. I think we all agree that that's a real thing. And what I'm wondering is, as a leader, how might I be able to spot the people who are job hugging, to try and intervene before that resignation letter comes in?
And Jeff, you're right. I think.
Oh, sorry.
Jeff, go for it.
I was actually going to say, Kristien, you nailed it in this last one. I want to piggyback off of you.
Look, let's just start. Why are they job hugging? Well, because people are confused. Some are upset. Some are angry. Some are nervous. I think there's all those kinds of emotions linked to job hugging. We're trying to look to the market to see what's happening. We're looking to world wars. We're looking to volatile exchange rate fluctuations, which are affecting people, certainly here in Latin America. There's so many factors where you go, I don't know what I want to do, where I want to do it, under what format. Because people are saying, on the format, they're saying, I want to be part of the gig economy, but I also want health insurance and I also want paid vacation. So is that gig economy the right place for me? I want to start a business. Do I have the capital? Do I have the means to start my own business? So people are kind of just confused, upset, angry. And I definitely have seen over the last year and a half, really, ever since we've been kind of talking about AI in every single news article and every single business meeting and every single, the AI domination, people are confused and they're nervous. And so they're just kind of sitting back going, God, what do I do? Where do I move? What do I do next? How can you spot one? I think as a leader, you start to see maybe, one telltale sign is they start to get involved in too many extracurricular activities. And so definitely I think a sign is if your top performer on your team is suddenly, really involved in some incredible charity work, or is suddenly, has suddenly decided that they're going to go and do a master's in org psychology, for example, or they've suddenly decided, I think you can take that as a sign of, not always, but you could take that as a sign of, we're not stimulating them enough here. They're getting bored, they're getting anxious, and so they're upskilling. They're going to study something different. They're getting involved in community stuff, because that's actually something that happens when you start to feel like you don't belong anymore in the workplace. You're going to look to build your community elsewhere. And so back to that example of charity work or volunteering, or you're suddenly the one that's going out and doing a bunch of financial education masterclasses with children in underprivileged schools. As a leader, you've got to look and go, what are they searching for? Why are they doing that? Why is my top performer? Why is my top team suddenly half the time on the job and the other half of the time studying something in preparation for the future, building community elsewhere outside of this team? Or frankly, maybe they just aren't showing up to the office, right? Like, we might have a hybrid policy and they might be kind of doing 2 or 3 days at home and a couple of days in the office. And I've certainly seen a trend again where people are going, you force me back into the office, but I've got a little flexibility here. I'm going to stay at home. I'm gonna stay out of this environment. So I think as a leader, if you look around, you've got a team of 50 and you go, 5 or 6 of these people feel like they're building something outside of work. 5 or 6 people here are studying something totally different. 5 people over here are volunteering. Suddenly you've got to go, oh wow, half my team are doing other things and they're not engaged. They're not here and present. And I think that's how you go, oh God, these people are kind of just plodding along. These colleagues of mine are plodding along, plotting for their next move. I think there's some of the tells. I think in real life, there's some of the telltale signs. Because I don't think the people that are job hugging are getting angry. I don't think they're getting restless, Leanne. I don't think they're getting provocative. I don't think they're the ones sitting in a meeting being the contrarian with their boss going, I don't agree with this. That's a horrible annual plan. I'm not going to deliver $100 million towards your plan. That's not how it works in that corporate business setting. That's not how people react. I think you've got to look for some of those more subtle signs of they're going in different directions, and that direction is away from us and is away from me as a leader, not towards me. What do you think, Jeff?
So amazing points there. Uncertainty plays a massive role right now, but I want to speak on the manager side and the leader side of things, right? In the last employee engagement report, we saw that manager engagement actually dipped from 30% to 27%. Now, I'm going to land the plane here, I promise, but let's go to that famous quote, right? People don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. So a lot of the stress could be coming from the fact that leaders, managers, just like employees, feel uncertain about the future. There's a lot of negativity in the news. And I felt like last year was an insane year when it came to some of these CEO memos that were dropped. They were practically openly saying hey, 996 workforce is the new norm. Everyone needs to be you need to be so a part of our workforce that you need to sleep under your desk and do all these things. And if not, we're going to have AI come in and replace you. So essentially, that was kind of the big theme last year. And that's what kind of swung the pendulum of employee to employer markets kind of all the way to the employer side. You had leaders openly advocating, or C-level leadership saying hey, we want to make sure that we get every ounce of productivity from our employees. Now, granted, that also falls on the managers as well, and they're probably undergoing the same levels of stress as the employees, and their engagement levels are suffering because of it. So I will say, if an employee is stressed, it's likely because their manager is also stressed, and it is stress doesn't we're just adding stress on top of stress without kind of having a plan for it. And I feel like that could be leading to a lot of job dissatisfaction. I myself have seen stressed out managers kind of taken out on employees and what that means for the workforce. I don't need a metric to define that. I've seen people's faces and how they react to getting yelled at, getting screamed at, being told that if they don't hit certain goals, their jobs are on the line. And when you have that message permeating from senior leadership and C-level employees of some of the largest organizations in the world saying hey, your employees are dispensable and we could get rid of them and replace them with AI, which, by the way, Kristien, amazing job. We went 28 minutes. That has to be a record, right? But for mentioning AI, we did not mention AI for full 28 minutes. So kudos to us. But yes, I do feel like a lot of the issues are stemming from, C-level folks, and they're kind of gung-ho on ensuring that we have to start looking at AI as a employee replacer, which shouldn't be. It should be an amplifier, and we should be empowering people to use all these new tools, similar to like what our, I guess, grandparents got calculators for the first time. That's a whole different subject. I want to stay on point with this one. And yes, a lot of great points.
I think that's a really interesting point, though, Jeff, when you mention kind of the managers don't have it figured out either. You're right. Like the leaders of leaders, that leader that I mentioned of the 100-person team, they're also potentially job hugging. They don't know what their next step looks like. They're getting the pressure from the top to meet the numbers. They're getting the pressure from the top to cut heads. And then they're the ones that actually are putting the face to the wider team of 100, 1,000 people. They don't have it figured out either, which is why I think the best companies out there at the moment are investing in, and this is a little bit of a plug here, Leanne, for profiles like yourselves or my, organizational psychologists, but they're actually bringing in proper coaches, real coaches, not life coaches, and not necessarily executive coaches either, but kind of the Wendy from Billions kind of character, right? We're bringing in here the coach that can help those leaders in both directions, manage that team and the message that's flowing down, and also manage the messaging and the relationship with the leaders above them, because they're in that crunch position as well at the moment. If you're a leader of a team of 100 people, it's not a fun time. It's not a fun, moment. And so I think companies that are investing in like really awesome human coaching programs with those kinds of leaders are going to see the benefits. They're going to see those leaders stay, those leaders be more productive, fabulous Glassdoor scores because we talk about investing in our people externally. But coaching has never been more important for that population that just needs someone to talk to. That leader of 100 can be really, really lonely because you know that you've got to cut 30 heads in 3 months' time. You know you've got to meet your numbers or your head will be cut. Who do you go and talk to? Who do you get vulnerable with? And unfortunately, in today's corporate world, we don't allow for those vulnerabilities to necessarily be surfaced in those exchanges, in those team meetings. And so you need a coach. You need a little bit like, I call it professional therapy, but you need to go and just kind of decompress and let it out because those guys are struggling as well. And so I always feel, we always like to beat up the leader or the middle manager. They've kind of got a tough job as well at the moment in corporate life, right? Because they're in the middle of this sandwich, and it's not pleasant.
Yeah,
it's not a good time.
And it's a media narrative that's being pushed too. Like, can AI get rid of the middle manager? Like that is if you Google that right now, there are dozens, if not hundreds of articles trying to push managers out of the equation entirely. So I don't know. There's a lot of negativity towards managers. That stress, I'm sure it's permeating. It's going downwards. It's trickling down to employees. And it is just adding on to this employee engagement crisis that's kind of going on right now. So
yeah.
I could not agree more. I think I've said more than once on this platform, if you do one thing, train your managers and support your managers. I agree. Coaching is such a wonderful way of supporting our leaders and our managers. And I also think there's so much more we can do. And as you said, Kristien, feed into that. We're investing in our people personal development. I was reading some data from the Chartered Institute of Management the other day, and they were talking about accidental managers. And I've never seen a statistic this bad before. I've seen data on accidental managers, but never this high. In this survey of around 3,000 people, 82% of new managers who'd been in the role for a couple of years had received no formal training or support in that role. And it went on. It may have dropped to maybe like 52% for people who had been in management for 10 years plus. And even our senior leaders, we were looking at about, I think it's around 35%. Don't quote me on these numbers. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but it was a significant amount that still hadn't received any training. We're asking so much of them without giving them the appropriate resources to do it. What I want to move on to is why businesses should care. Because like you say, there's so much going on. There's so much to think about. There's so much pressure. When a business is under this type of pressure and turnover is low, engagement, is it feeling like a nice to have? And if it is, how do we as HR leaders and practitioners make a case for continuing to invest in employee development in a time like this?
Look, I'll take that one, and I've got a really strong viewpoint on this. And back to the marketing analogy earlier, your team and your employees are an extension of your consumer brand. So gone are the days where you could invest, 50 million in a new product launch and have an underinvested, horrible team sitting behind it representing customer service, after sales, whatever. You've got to think about your employees as an extension of your consumer brand. It's what we talk about all the time when we talk about the magnetic 8 and employer brand and the different lenses through which you see if your business is showing up externally with power, with might, and is resonating with your target audience. So for me, do it. If you're sitting there as a business owner, as a CEO, and you're going, I've got to cut costs. I've got to, I'm worried about the macros. Just do it selfishly, because by investing in your employees, you're also investing in how your product and your services are showing up externally. I don't think there's any examples out there anymore of, an incredible product and a horrible team and a horrible kind of set of HR policies. And I'm going to use an example. Let's name one. Lego. What a resurgence Lego has had the last 15 years. And I'd invite some HR practitioners here today that might not be so familiar with the new head of people at Lego was announced yesterday. But look at the Lego people team. Look at the initiatives they have. Look at the onboarding with new hires. Look at their benefits, their paternity leave. It's just incredible. Like the way they create a stickiness and an engagement in their employee base. And then you then go, wow, but all these new products, all these new associations with the World Cup, with Formula One. And, since when did a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old want a Lego set for Christmas? When I grew up, it was like something you had as a 7 or 8-year-old. Like, kudos to Lego. I think they've tripled, quadrupled their sales the last few years. But look at companies where you go, great product, innovating, great quality, great values. And then look at the team that sits behind them. And I think that's when you start to go, I don't think you can have one without the other. And that's a physical product. But if we went to any of the airlines, any of the hotel chains, any of those real service-orientated brands, I think that just gets even stronger, that message of just do the employee engagement piece. Maybe not because you want to be a fantastic leader or the best place to work or win lots of awards. Just do it because you want your product and service to be number one. You want to sell more. So I just think there's such a commercial crossover there, Leanne. I just don't think you can disconnect them. Final idea here, and it kind of links back to that point before. Read an incredible article a couple of weeks ago how in Scandinavia, and it's always the Scandies, that are always ahead of the game here, are spending 6% of their payroll, their total payroll costs, on performance management, performance development, on coaching, on learning and development, on developing their people. 6%. In the US, in the Americas, it's less than 1%. And then you say, of that 1%, how much of that is being spent on AI upskilling academies, techie stuff? So you go, hang on a minute. Like if we're investing less than 1%, if we're spending $1 million on payroll, but we're spending less than $1,000 a month on learning and development, something's got to give. That's pretty bad. So maybe we should look to our friends in Sweden and in Copenhagen, in Denmark, and say they're doing something, right? They're investing 6% of that monthly total cost of your employee base, and they're investing it back in them. And they're saying, and again, that links back to our Lego example, right? Back to Denmark, back to Copenhagen. You're saying, invest in your people, you'll get better product, better sales, and be a more successful company.
I actually was looking into some data on this. Sorry, Jeffrey, we'll come to you because it will feed in nicely. Is some actual research around, and I thought it was really quite powerful actually. And there was a research that looked at over 8,000 businesses before the financial crisis, during and afterwards, to see how they invested and what happened in kind of recovery years. And the organizations with high employee engagement during the economic crisis grew earnings per share faster in the rebound than by a huge margin. Organizations with the top 25% of engagement scores enjoyed a 22% higher profitability and 21% higher productivity in recovery compared to the bottom 25% of organizations. So as you say, Kristien, even if you want to be really cold and commercial about this,
Exactly.
Employee engagement is really good for business.
Really good for business. Totally.
I just wanted to give you all the praise in the world. You absolutely nailed it. One of the big things that we would pitch early on at Officevibe was employee advocacy. What is the downstream effect when you have high engagement rates? Can your organization do well enough and have your employees become, advocates for you on social, on all these different platforms, so much so that there is that kind of commercial crossover where it's like, oh, wow, these people love their organization so much that they're willing to go above and beyond to kind of market it for free. And it's organic, and you are constantly seeing photos of teams at an office, teams, at an offsite, whatever the case may be, that some folks might even skip going to Glassdoor. They're like, wow, I want to work there. And it's happened at my organization at All Voices. We have several employees that have come in because they established relationships, and we just kind of like talked up and truly mean that we like love it over there. So with that said, I want to say you nailed it. Employee advocacy, please invest in some of these engagement platforms. I also want to just tie it back to a data point, right? When you are investing in employee listening, whether it's an employee engagement tool, an employee relations platform, whatever the case may be, you tend to see a nice little uptick on those engagement scores, right? Companies that collect employee feedback see around, I want to say 8 to 10% engagement gains. So if you do want to, actually start getting more advocacy online and really aside from understanding your needs, getting that promotion online, start investing in feedback, start collecting it, really start getting energetic about listening to employees and doing the best you can to address them. And you're going to start seeing, those engagement numbers creep up, and hopefully it leads to that nice effect of employee advocacy online. I also want to highlight that, my organization, it's only 40 people, but people tend to 40 person headcount, but it does appear to be a lot larger because we're actively talking about how we love working there, and we're actively talking about everything that we're doing. So we'll say, if we're doing that as a 40-person organization, I can't even imagine what a company the size of Lego, with probably tens of thousands of employees, are benefiting from having all their employees kind of just like post about them and kind of say, wow, this is truly one of the best places to work. And also want to highlight that, yes, Lego's sales are probably up because, man, the demand for them, it's intense. I think I saw like one of these Death Star ones go for $500. So if anyone out there, if anyone out there wants to gift one, please feel free to send it.
PR packages are welcome.
Yes, gladly.
But it's so interesting, Jeff, that you mentioned that Lego actually do a really good job about showing up and showing off externally and using the power of their real engagement internally, externally. But actually, of the big companies, that's another huge gap and miss. They don't have employee advocacy programs because for the last 10 years, we were so worried about what our employees would say about us on social media. We had everyone sign disclaimers in their contract saying, if you say something that's out of line, we will fire you the same day. Now, companies are kind of easing back on those social media guidelines, principles, rules, and saying, actually, wouldn't it be great? We've got 350,000 people working for us around the world, and of which 260 are on LinkedIn. And if they posted like once a week, wow, what would we have to spend on paid media to get the eyeballs on that content, both for our product, but also for our workplace vibes, engagement, come and work here message. And so, again, 90% of companies over 50,000 people worldwide do not have an employee advocacy program on LinkedIn. And I know there's other platforms available. And the moment we move to China, there's different platforms over there, but they just don't have a clear sense of content pillars. What are we encouraging people to post? How are we, frankly, how are we asking our leaders to set the example, right? Because if you're the leader of a team of 1,000, 10,000 people, I want to see you visible on LinkedIn. And I don't want selfies. I want to see your team. I don't want to see selfies of you at Cannes Lions or at CES in Vegas, kind of having the free work trip, staying at a 5-star hotel, because that's going to switch me off. You're talking about tough economic times. There's no bonus this year. There's no pay rise this year. But then I see my leader flying first class around the world at all of the conferences. Not the best look. What do? You start to develop content where you recognize the top performers on your team, where you focus on, individuals that have gone above and beyond. It's not rocket science. It's about putting the spotlight as a leader on your team members that are just doing cool shit. And if you can get that right and that sticky sauce right, I think you're onto something. And again, other leaders out there doing this really well, but I think using one of our great British entrepreneurs, Richard Branson started this 20 years ago. Right? And Richard Branson with Virgin Group is always putting the focus on what an incredible team he has across the portfolio of companies. For me, he's like the OG kind of leader influencer on LinkedIn. There's others, But I just think Richard does such a great job because it's not about him. It's about him on the flight, but he's going to talk about Shelley, who's the head flight attendant who gave the best service on the Vegas to London flight. Or he's going to be in the hotel in Chicago talking about the new opening, but talking about the general manager that went above and beyond. Or on the cruise ship talking about the entertainment team. But the focus is on your people. It's on your company culture. It's on how we live the day to day. It's not about you as the leader. And it's not beautiful selfies with professional makeup and lots of professional lighting. And so those employee advocacy programs can be so powerful. They can be so cheap to stand up as well, because you don't really need infrastructure to do this. You just need a leader that says, hey, I trust my people. I trust them with our customers. So I'm going to trust them with their own voice on LinkedIn. And we're going to encourage them to post and post frequently and post authentically. But we're going to give them some ideas and we're going to give them a little content to work with. It's not rocket science, but so many companies today are missing that opportunity. And so then when they go, oh no, I need to hire 10,000 people in Miami over the next 3 months. And they go, where do we start? You go, well, you've had a team there for 25 years, but they're just silent. They're gagged. So, I think today what we spoke about the first kind of 40, 45 minutes was how do you build a real culture, a real engagement in your organization? But once you've built it, let's communicate it. Let's lift the lid, open access. It doesn't need to be behind closed doors anymore. You don't have to lock it up. You need to open it up, share it with the world. And it can really pay dividends. Why has it not happened in the past? Because HR didn't really get on with marketing. Marketing doesn't get on with comms. External comms want to own all the channels. And we all kind of in the past used to kind of ruffle each other's feathers. We're in 2026, for goodness sake. Let's all just get in a room and make this work, make this happen. And let's leave the egos, let's leave the exco egos out of the door and go, we've got an incredible employee base here. Let's use it. No?
Fabulous. I'm so sorry. I just want to quickly, first of all, Georgie, we just need to check on our questions. We've just got carried away. That is absolutely fabulous. For those people who want to know more, obviously go and follow these amazing people because they'll tell you more and more stuff like that. Little plug for our little show. In about 4 weeks' time, we've got someone called Rachel Harris who's coming on. Much smaller than Lego, only about 50 or 60 employees, but she talks about employee-generated content, EGC, not UGC. Basically, exactly what these guys are talking about there. So, Georgia, have we got any burning questions that people want answered?
We have indeed. We've got about 4. So, first one, and it's playing a devil's advocate to the previous conversation about job hugging. When is an employee at the point of job hugging too late?
In terms of,
is it
too late to change their mind? Or?
I think what they're asking is it too late once they're at that point? Too late to
re-engage, to kind of pull them back in.
I think not. I to answer that one, it's as simple as just having a conversation. And my boss over there, Emily, left a very nice comment saying, leave it to Jeffrey to have the empath type of response. But it's really just a matter of having an open and honest conversation. There it is. It's really a matter of having a conversation. Even though I come from a tech background and I've built feedback systems up, I truly believe that I just have that all these systems there are almost like a safeguard. The reality is you just need to hop on a Google Meet chat or a face-to-face, time for a coffee, and really have that heart-to-heart. The same way that Kristien was kind of mentioning that managers need mentorship, employees need that mentorship, and what better person to do it than their managers, right? That are actively working with them, having meetings with them once a week. So you have to have pardon my French here, a no bullshit conversation and say hey, this is how I'm feeling. Why are you like this? What can we do to really understand? How can we meet your needs here and make sure that you could get back on that high horse and really be a productive member over here? Yes, right now times are tough. Job hugging is it's becoming the norm because of all these external things going on. But a real great manager is really going to know when they'll know how to spot when their employees stress and have that one-on-one conversation and really drill down to whatever it is that's truly bothering an employee. Also want to say I have a psychology background, so maybe I'm biased. I always like to see where I could help people. I know that might not be the case for every manager, but I think at the end of the day, it really just boils down to communication.
And I'm going to answer the question slightly differently, which is I think you can job hug for a year. I'm gonna put a time limit on it. I'm gonna say do it for a year, because after that year, it's going to be detrimental to you, your career. It's going to be detrimental to your mental health if you kind of stay in that job longer than a year and you're just not enjoying it, not having a good time. Sometimes you're going to have to extend that a little bit. It's not binary, right? It could be longer than a year because, frankly, you need the benefits. You need the paycheck until you've lined up the next job. But I think sitting comfortably for a year is fine. Any longer than that is just not good for either side. So, like, if you're sitting there going, "Oh my goodness, I've been in a job for like 5 years that I've been hugging and I want to get out of," probably it's time to make things happen. Yeah.
And just to add on to that, like, I brought up the phrase actively disengage, right? Around 2011, when I first started my employee engagement software, that phrase was kind of a new phrase. And I want to say back then it was like 12% of people were actively disengaged, meaning that they would go out of their way to sabotage their company. They would be willing to, like, push out data and stuff. I feel like once you go past a year of job hugging and you start getting to a point where you go from disengaged to actively disengaged, you're just going to want to freaking, it becomes dangerous for the organization and for your own mental health.
Good point.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
All I know is we know from the research of certain types of leadership transformational, for example, can weaken the link between intention to quit and somebody actually handing in their notice. So it's not too late if you're noticing somebody is job hugging, if you approach it in the right way. And I totally agree with Jeffrey is saying as well, in terms of having those conversations. And those conversations really need to focus around, how do we make this work meaningful? How do we improve the resources you've got to do your job? And that includes training and development. Is this role stretching you in a way that is purposeful to you? And do we, fit long term into the broader goals that you have in terms of outside your life? And if you can't do any of that within your power as a manager, then there's probably nothing you can do, but it's not too late if you can. So have those conversations and focus on those things.
Georgia, there's a question here from Jennifer Martinez. Do you think we've covered that, or should we put this to the panel? I know we've touched on it. It says, I'll put it up on the screen, but basically it's saying, being in such trying times, having the threat of AI taking over the workforce, how does one keep employee engagement high at work? Now, I know we've talked around this, and to be fair, we did go 26 minutes, as you said, Jeffrey, without talking about it. But have you guys got any thoughts on this particular question? Can you both see it, by the way, the question?
Yeah. I have a doom and gloom one, so maybe you want to start with the positive one?
No, you go. Start with the doom and gloom.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, spin it up and do something positive. I'm very positive as an individual. My team will tell you this. I don't like where certain things are heading. And I was doing a little bit of research leading up to this, and I was like finding out about what these AI enthusiasts are now calling, like, the next kind of big jump, where we're going to have this underclass that serves people that are working those 996, learning everything about AI, becoming prompt engineers. And I just want to start by saying, like, I don't think that's the way where we're going to head as a society. And I know a lot of these C-level folks that brought up all these memos last year, and all this nonsense that's being pushed on by the media is kind of saying, like, AI is going to take over everything. You have to work 996 hours. You have to do everything you can to become this next, like, superstar, and the underclass are going to work all these trade level jobs. Wanted to bring all this stuff up to say, like, I do think that people, hopefully like everyone on this call, are going to step in and ask for more governance, more rules, more regulations. I know that the UK is already having, like, AI regulations, if I remember correctly. I do think the United States will hopefully catch up and get to a point where we're starting to say, like, okay, enough is enough when it comes to what AI can do and how it should impact workers. We saw Oracle lay off 30,000 people today, or some absurd number, and they cited AI as one of the main reasons. I think sorry if anyone hears from Oracle, but I do think that's going to have a little bit of backlash. And let me land the plane here and say, we're seeing something that I believe is very temporary. And I do think that society will heal, and it will eventually, that pendulum will swing back towards the employers, and we'll start seeing AI more as a tool, an amplifier, not a replacer of employees. And eventually there will be leaders that step up and say, hey, the future isn't going to be folks that are buying and selling things with AI agents. We need employees. We need workers. We need people that are going to benefit the economy and actually provide value and provide meaning for why we work. So, like, there has to be some kind of limitations on the growth and expansion of AI. All that to say is, right now it does appear to be a threat, and there is a doom and gloom scenario where there is this AI overclass and the underclass of tradesmen. I know a lot of folks in the tech community want to believe that that is the future, but the reality is we're going to go back to being somewhat of a normal state. And I do think that answering that employee engagement part, once we kind of put those regulations in place, and once there are certain laws and restrictions on what AI can do and what it can replace, it's going to help benefit the employer marketing. So yeah, I hope that made a little bit of sense.
No, it's brilliant. I just want to jump in and ask you, Kristien, because I think that's a really good angle.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we'd have time otherwise, but in terms of this whole, as Jeffrey said, with AI and the layoffs and how there is some, backlash to that, how does this play in with employer brand? With what organizations do now going to be telling of their employer brand in the future? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thoughts there, strong thoughts. You've got to be super sharp and honest about what's happening internally and what you're selling externally, because if not, candidates smell a rat. And so there are examples of brands out there that have had beautiful consumer brands and have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in their employer brand over the last couple of years, and they're promising incredible career paths and graduate programs, etc. And then you hear they've just laid off 10,000 grads, and you go, "Oh, well, what about this career path? I'm a year in, and you just sacked me. You just fired me at a critical point." So I think as a candidate, the candidates are getting far more educated and far smarter at distinguishing between what is marketing BS and what is a true representation of what it's like to work there. And they're getting smarter. They're going out to more sources than ever before. They're looking at the leaders on LinkedIn. They're going to Glassdoor. They're Googling. They're going to careers fairs. They're talking to ex-employees. They're talking to family members that know somebody that, like, everyone's doing their research to really uncover what it's really like to work there. So you're right. It's all about congruence. You can sell it externally if you've got the goods to back it up. And I think that's where we're headed. And the companies that are frankly lying externally about a promise that they can't deliver on are going to struggle in the future. Back to that question. That question left me thinking. I loved everything Jeff said, but two other kind of quick points there. I work closely with Udemy, and Udemy are, I guess, the world's largest now upskiller on all things AI. And I had a great conversation with them last week out of San Francisco. And they said, yeah, number one is our whole AI suite of academy, and we've got 800 different courses. Number 2, 3, and 4 on the list of most in-demand courses and upskilling is public speaking, creativity, but creativity along with kind of like graphic design and thinking about actual like designers is all of those kind of actual human skills. And so I think there's now going to be a little bit of a change again. The wind is going to swing and going to go. It's great that you've done your prompt engineering kind of 101, and you've kind of delved into the tech and the future focus. But actually, companies are now going, oh my goodness. But those leaders can't speak in front of a room of 100 leaders. And oh my goodness, that presentation we saw was awful because they had Claude do it and it just looks like AI gobbledygook. So I think we are going back to actually saying we've got to invest in some of those kind of, we used to call them soft skills. I don't think I don't know what we call them anymore, but it's just some of those basics, right? That we all should have in the workplace. So that reassures me, because it shows me that we're still, giving a little kudos and putting a little weight on those skills which are so important in life in general. And then I think back to Jennifer's kind of comment there, my only other little nugget would be, rather than worrying about what the companies are doing and what society are doing, take your own control of the situation. So I would say, Jennifer, what are you studying? What are you interested in? If you're an incredible creative graphic designer, like, let's focus on the artistic side. Like, let's continue to develop that flair. Like, focus on what you can do in this situation where the world seems bleak. We mentioned doom and gloom. We mentioned world wars. We mentioned tens of thousands of layoffs today. But like, as an individual, as a candidate, what can I do to stay alive, to stay relevant, to stay active? And it normally comes back to linking where you're good at something with where you're passionate about something. And that's kind of my advice really to any candidate that's sitting there going, oh my goodness, am I going to be irrelevant in 10 years? And I go, but what are you great at? No, but you're great at this today. Focus on what we're good at and develop that and make that a super skill. Because if not, you're going to spend the next 10 years looking at Instagram and looking at, the news cycle, and you're not going to sleep. and you're going to worry about it. And then we probably are going to be irrelevant in the job market in 10 years' time. So focus on what we can do today to stay ahead. Human skills. That's right.
Human skills is an awesome
human
phrase.
skills. That's it. Yeah, it's human skills. Totally is.
I love this. I mean, Lee, have we run out of time?
Well, we're good. I think we have hit our hour mark, but I did check in with Jeffrey and Kristien before we started. They said they've got an extra 10 minutes or so. So if we've got any more questions, Georgia?
Yeah. So I think the one by Jacqueline Durrett has probably been answered. We say that AI should be an amplifier, not a replacement. But when companies use it as a replacement, how can we encourage employees to see it as a collaborative tool?
Oh, I've got to find this. Who was this by?
It is. You got it.
Is that right?
That's the one.
There we go, guys. So who wants to start off with that one?
I'll lead off with this.
Yeah. Go.
I feel very fortunate to work within, an AI native platform, an employee relations platform, and where they taught. I think what's the adoption rate? Like it's 100% AI adoption at this point, obviously, but like we find ways and we articulate them in meetings to kind of make sure that everything that can be automated is automated by AI. We have several different service providers do that. I feel like the best way to tell employees and even employers alike is just to let them know, like, this is saving time. This is really here not to replace me, but to save time doing X amount of manual tasks. If it takes 20, 30 minutes a day, it's going to do it in a couple of seconds. So that's always the number one use case for AI. It costs $20 a month to have something that's going to save upwards of, 20, 30 hours a week. By all means, it's a smart choice to make. And I feel like that message of time saving, what's the number one product pitch line that's always used, right? You get back to doing what you actually care about. You get back time in using certain systems, whether it is AI, an automation tool. If you're knowledgeable with Excel and you can make all these calculations and don't have to write them down in paper, it saves you time so you can get back to what you're good at and hopefully make time to attend a podcast like this, right? So like that's really the number one thing I would encourage. When you're communicating with either employees or employers, let them know that these systems are really there to save time, to hopefully work on those human skills and to connect with other people and maybe other organizations internally and establish those relationships that are going to benefit your organizations and the individual long term. So that's how I would go about it. And also love to see that phrase, AI should be an amplifier, not a replacement, picking up steam. I used it on our podcast and I drop it on LinkedIn, I think once a week now. So love it.
Amazing.
Then I'd just add there, I'd go back to that prior point I made. Knowing your worth, knowing what you're fantastic at, what you're incredible at. You can't be gray anymore in the office. You can't be kind of like just plodding along. You've got to have a super skill, a superpower. So are you the best presenter in your team? Do you create the best presentations? Are you the leader of other leaders? Do you bring together employee resource groups? So are you the person who is leading the committee and have a following? Like you've got to have a position. And by position, I don't just mean, the corporate job position. I mean, you've got to have a place in that workplace that makes you stand out for the right reasons. And AI's not replacing that at the moment, right? And just know your super skill, hone it, continue to invest in yourself, but know that increasingly, that average performance that we might start to see with kind of the job hugging phenomenon that we've mentioned today as well, will only last so long. You've got to stand out for the right reasons, know your worth, and do stuff that the AI can't currently do. And I think that's how you retain a little bit of confidence, a little bit of swag in the workplace, because, you're not replaceable at the moment.
And I just like to build a little bit more hope on that, because I too sometimes find myself questioning my relevance at times. One of the things I always think about is the future job report that came out by the World Economic Forum, and it talked about skills that are going to be more and more important over the next 5 years. And there was a whole quadrant in those results that was pro-social skills that are innately human. So it's things like critical thinking, empathy, all those things that AI can't do. So go and have a look at that as well, and make a little list of other ways you can invest in yourself, because that's, as Kristien said, is going to make the difference.
Absolutely. Georgia, have we missed it? I mean, I know there's been a few questions, but a lot of them have been answered already. Is there anything you feel that hasn't been answered already?
Let's leave it on this one then. Sarah Belendane said those are all indicators that people have already decided to step away. What are some indicators where leaders can have earlier notice? What earlier indicators have we got?
Just pop that on the screen if you want to read it.
Yeah. I think we touched on that a little bit earlier. We kind of said where you realize that in that 40-hour work week, they're finding ways to go and do volunteering, go and do new studies, go in different directions, explore new avenues. I think as a leader, you've got to read the writing on the wall. I think we touched on that earlier. Are we missing anything else, guys?
The thing I might add is this, this can also come into, I think Kristien mentioned, it's a mental health aspect to this as well, particularly if somebody's been job hugging for a little while. It is these symptoms of burnout that are going to come. We're going to come detached from our work. We're going to get a bit cynical, and that masking is going to become exhausting. Showing up as if everything's fine and it's not. So it's looking at any changes in behavior can be useful. Any changes in appearance, how somebody shows up to work. Even if it's subtle, can be signs as well that somebody is job hugging or more really disengaging. So looking for those signs as well could be useful.
I have to think from a engineer standpoint, if they're not clearing out tickets, or if they're not the productivity component to it, right? If they're not being able to complete tasks, mostly because they feel glum, for lack of a better phrase there, and they don't just feel like working because they feel so disengaged that they're wearing this mask, and the quality and quantity of their work, they're not as productive as usual. That's always kind of an early giveaway, but I feel like that one's pretty, dare I say, obvious.
And just a final thought here, guys. Can we just go back to basics? Can we just speak? Can we just communicate? Can we just see our manager? When I started out in work, I had a one-to-one every week with my manager, an hour. Just let's communicate. And then what happened is they all went virtual during the pandemic, and then it went from once a week to maybe this is bi-weekly, but maybe it's monthly. But no, we've got the summer holidays, but we've got these holidays. And so people, I've got friends that say to me, they speak to their manager 6 times a year. And I'm going, 6 times a year, but you work 60 hours a week. That the math doesn't math. So if we just went back to having a little bit more communication, a little bit more contact, I think we'd be able to on both sides figure out what's going on a little bit quicker. We wouldn't need to wait to the annual engagement survey to figure out that our team's disengaged, because you're speaking to your team once a week. And so I think we've got to go back to some of the basics, guys. I think that's where we're,
Kristien, now I have a question for you. Do you think the more time you spend doing heads down work and not communicating with your managers, could that create a little bit of disengagement because you're kind of operating in a silo for, let's say, 50? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. That weekly touch-in manager colleague kind of session is just so important. And the cadence of that is important. And actually, one of the worst things I've also seen is a manager that will put that in weekly and then will just cancel them. The worst thing is the canceller. Because actually now we go back to the earlier piece about being, if you're going to promise something, you better deliver it. So if you're going to promise me a weekly one-to-one, even if it's 20 minutes or 30 minutes, don't cancel it on me 10 minutes before the session every single time. Because my goodness, that's a surefire way to get that person wanting to leave or resigning or quitting, whatever we're calling it. So yeah, let's just go back to communicating. Let's just sit down. Let's have a weekly one-to-one. Let's go through objectives. Let's talk about what we've achieved. Let's talk about where we're headed. And when that doesn't exist, and when then that goes a month or 2 months between each occurrence, that's when you're going to get people leaving. Yeah.
Fantastic. I see Emily and Rebecca on the comments. If you all, those are my teammates. If you ever cancel a meeting, I'm going to be very upset and I might cry. So please don't ever cancel on me.
You've been warned. Oh, wow. I mean, I think we could keep going for another hour easily on this, but I think we covered some really important areas of topic. And I think we also I think you both gave brilliant advice in terms of practical things we can do to support employee engagement and advocacy on a budget. It's just having these conversations. It's using the resources and how to spot people who may be job hugging and how we can help them. So thank you both so much, Jeffrey and Kristien. You're absolute rock stars. Thank you.
Yeah, you really are. Go and follow. Jeffrey, I've got my head People First, your podcast, but I think you've just changed the name, haven't you?
No, People First. We're going to have Kristien on here this quarter. Kristien, I got to get back to you. And yeah, tell Stephen I say hi, by the way.
I will.
I'm excited to have you on, and it should be a blast.
Can't wait.
It's an early promo, right?
And for those people who want to learn more about you, where's the best place for them to go, Kristien?
LinkedIn. Yeah, come follow me on LinkedIn. Yeah, very active on there.
Fabulous. And Jeffrey, I'm guessing all voices in LinkedIn as well for you.
All voices on LinkedIn. We'll be posting clips of our People First podcast. Check us out. We're doing some amazing stuff in the realm of employee relations. So it's fun stuff going on.
And if you want to hear more about Jeffrey, then flip back about 2 weeks here. We've got an hour of him on our podcast. Kristien, we definitely having you on. I can't remember if we booked you in yet or not, but you are 100% coming in, whether you want to come on or not. You are 100% coming on. Anything else to add before we wrap up, Lee?
Only to say we will keep this video up. So if anybody came halfway through, it will be up to go back to the beginning. And the audio will actually be on Truth Lies and Work podcast feed from tomorrow afternoon, so you can check it out there as well. Thank you very much to Associate Producer George as well for helping us with the comments and the tech side of it. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you very soon.
Yeah, see you all soon. Bye, guys.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you.
That's it for this one. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like to connect with any of our panelists, you'll find all of their details in the show notes. If you'd like to be a future guest on one of our LinkedIn Lives, we would love to hear from you. Drop us an email at podcast@truthliesandwork.com. And if you enjoyed this, please do leave us a review. It genuinely helps more people find the show. See you soon.